Okay, for our big news break here at 9 a.m., the Defence Ministry has lifted curbs on the procurement of heavy-duty Tatra trucks for the Indian Army. Remember, this is the same controversial Tatra truck controversy that actually broke out during the UPA regime. Now, excluded from the procurement process some 2 years back over a corruption controversy, Tatra trucks will make a comeback into the Indian Armed Forces soon. The government now says it will procure the vehicles directly from the company manufacturing them instead of buying them through agent firms. Now, Tatra trucks had shot into prominence after a disclosure by the then Army Chief, General V.K. Singh, who happens to be a Minister of State in the present government, that an arms dealer had offered him bribe to get the Tatra trucks filed clear. The government argues that it will not deal with those under the probe and it needs the ban to be lifted to meet some immediate requirements. The rationale is that the ban on these heavy-duty trucks had resulted in delay in setting up of the missile regiments for the Army and the IAF.
It was an extremely candid defence minister who was speaking after almost 2 months in office, after intensive briefings on different subjects in a span of time in which his resolve, his vision has been very frequently tested. In fact, the defence minister now stands at a point where, even though he claims to be different from his predecessors and ensuring that the armed forces are equipped to the extent that they will deter the enemy action, but such is the state of the armed forces today that not only is it the question of the machine but also of maintaining the morale of the man behind the machine. Jugal Purohit in New Delhi for Headlines Today.
Okay, let me quickly go across to Jugal Purohit, who's getting us this latest breaking news. Now, Jugal, this is quite interesting because there are a number of questions that will follow from this particular decision, or at least this proposal within the Defence Ministry. The fact that the Defence Ministry wants to go ahead with the procurement of the very same Tatra trucks which shot into prominence because of, the whole kickback controversy. Just take us through what really is the Defence Ministry proposal at this stage.
Well, you see, Sanket, there is a sense of pragmatism that the Defence Ministry is now exhibiting after almost being in a denial mode for 8 to 9 years under the UPA, and particularly under the stewardship of A.K. Antony. We saw at that point in time many corruption cases, sprang up, and then the only answer to which was blacklisting and banning. Now, when you are the largest importer of arms in the world, you cannot afford to ban and blacklist firms, otherwise your own equipment and your own procedures go for a toss. That's exactly what has led the Defence Minister to conclude and say to us what he has said. Now, vis-a-vis the Tatra trucks, these are trucks which have been in use for the Indian Army for a very long time. What was happening, and the case that we spoke about, was essentially of buying it from a certain vendor who was not directly the manufacturer. Now what the Defence Ministry wants to do is it wants to cut off those ties. It wants to not deal with those people who are still under the investigation, even though the CBI has largely closed the case. But it now wants to deal directly with the company which is making Tatra, which makes one wonder why they couldn't do it before. But nevertheless, now under this new regime, the requirement is there, and they've found a way to ensure that they do not deal with the people under probe, but they deal directly with the firm manufacturing the trucks, and that's how even the modernization and equipping of the forces will continue, and those who are under a cloud will remain segregated.
Okay. Let's get in some perspective from Shiv also, who joins us this morning. Morning, Shiv. Jugal, do stay on with us. Shiv, effectively, this means that this is an entirely new procurement process. It's got nothing to do with what actually happened or the history that Tatra trucks involve.
Morning, Sanket. Yes, absolutely. Like Jugal pointed out, there's a generous measure of pragmatism here. A very important point to make is that the Tatra truck, which has been mired in this controversy, is actually like no other truck. Most of our, missile units, a large part of our logistical units are based on the Tatra truck platform, which means that You can't suddenly bring in another truck to actually replace it. There are very few other trucks, militarized trucks that can actually do the kind of work that Tatra trucks actually do. So even when this entire controversy broke out during the UPA, the army had gone into a complete tizzy, wondering how it was going to manage, to do without these particular trucks. Now, they were procuring. India was procuring these trucks, through intermediaries and through the Bharat Earth Movers Limited, which is a public sector undertaking under the Ministry of Defence. Now, all of that is off the table now. India is going to procure these directly from the source. So that is part A. That is the practicality of it. The part B of it is like Jugal said again, that instead of actually having to deal with companies, what the MOD is doing is trying to shift away from the entire process, the defense procurement process of blacklisting companies, of penalizing companies as a part of a knee-jerk reaction. In fact, Manohar Parrikar has said more than once since he's taken over as defense minister that they're going to revisit the entire process of penal action against companies, because it has become abundantly clear that the only people really affected by these blacklistings is the Indian warfighter, the Indian soldier, the Indian sailor, the Indian pilot. At the end of the day, these big defense companies abroad that supply defense equipment, blacklisting by one company doesn't really affect them very much in that sense, because they've got huge margins they supply to countries across the world. But at the end of the day, blacklisting only affects the people it's intended for, the end customer, which is the soldier on the ground. So what the government has now done is evolved a special sort of thought process. This began under Arun Jaitley, importantly, and now it's continuing under Manohar Parrikar. And I think the Tatra case, that the story that Jugal has just broken, is probably the first test case. And I think it's an important one, possibly because we actually operate hundreds of Tatra trucks, like Jugal said. Sanket, we've got Tatra trucks in many different units all across the country. They are heavy duty, multi-wheel, multi-axle trucks, which have the capability to do heavy duty military duties that few other trucks in the world actually can. So I think it's an important test case to test this new pragmatism.
Absolutely, but Shiv, that is just one aspect. And let me get Jugal back in the this breaking news story. Now, Jugal, as you've been reporting, and this breaking news suggests, it's also being argued that due to a hold on procurement, the maintenance of the fleet of over 6,500 such trucks in India was getting adversely affected due to lack of spares and other parts. So you're right in saying that this is a pragmatic decision being considered by the Defence Ministry. But on the other hand, is the political side of it. What stops the Congress at this moment, or the the erstwhile UPA regime, to come back and say that what was wrong when we were making this particular call, or when we were making this argument when we were in rule, and the BJP was opposing it?
Okay, there are 2 points here. First of all, is that the defense minister, I just explained, has said that initially and for all these years, the kind of procurement processes that existed were completely haphazard. Now, just to give you an example, the Tatra truck which the Indian Armed Forces used to procure was not procured from the original source. It was procured by an Indian public sector undertaking in conjunction with a UK-based company, which was then procuring it from the original source in Czechoslovakia. Now, such convoluted acquisition procedures ensured the existence and thriving of middlemen. Now what the defense minister has said is that he wants to keep those people away who are still under investigation, and he will buy directly from the source, which, as I said, makes one wonder as to why couldn't it be done earlier. But nevertheless, this is one reason. Second, of course, is the fact that in the previous regime also we had seen time and again that the first reaction of the defense ministry under the defense minister would be to blacklist. We saw that at the time of the VVIP helicopter crisis when the scam broke out. Even though as of now there is no aircraft to ferry VVIPs, but then the previous regime thought it fit to just blacklist everything and then think about it. Whereas now there's a concerted move. In fact, we are given to understand that a brand new procurement policy is likely to be unveiled in the first quarter of the coming year. So there are a lot of changes happening. And as I said, that such is the situation of not just the machines, but also the man behind the machines, that the Defence Ministry today has no other option but to be pragmatic. And if the Congress and the other parties wish to take it up, as I said, the Defence Minister has given an explanation, which I'm sure will be provided even on the other side when the political storm does kick up. But the fact is that there is a dire situation that the armed forces are facing, and they will need to be equipped. Otherwise, it's perhaps going to be too late.
Okay, Jugal Purohit as well as Shivaru, thanks very much for getting us this breaking news story. Of course, it is being seen as a pragmatic decision by the Defence Ministry, but whether it will be mired in yet another political controversy or not is something that we'll know as reactions start pouring in. Jugal Purohit, many thanks for getting us this exclusive news break.